Hi, welcome to our new series, Raise a Hand, looking at some questions that we may have about this word worship and what it really means, what worship really looks like in our lives. Probably most of us, when we hear the word worship, we're thinking about a location like this. We're thinking about a band playing, we're thinking about congregation singing, and that is part of worship, but it's not the whole thing. So over the next few weeks, we're going to have a little bit of an explore about this idea of worship and what worship really means and what worship really looks like for us in our faith today. In Luke chapter 4 and verse 8, Jesus, who's being tempted by the devil, responds to one of the devil's temptations to try and get him to do something wrong by saying, "It is written, you should worship only the Lord your God and serve only him." We are designed as human beings to worship. Watch people in a concert. Look at people at a football match. See how we idolize people because of what they can do, whether it's creative or whether it's a skill they've got like football or something like that. We're designed to express worship, and God is so keen, so passionate about us worshipping only him because he's the only one who's worthy. Now, we've looked at this in the Keep Taking the Tablet series we did on the 10 Commandments. So I'm not going to spend hours flogging this one because, hopefully you've got a good idea about this now. We're made to worship God. If we worship anything else, we're going to get ourselves into trouble. In 2 Samuel chapter 6 and beginning to read at verse 14, we read this really interesting account from the life of King David. They're bringing the Ark of the Covenant back into Jerusalem after a long period of absence. Everyone is really excited. People are lining the streets. There's catering, the whole lot. And David's walking in front of this procession, leading the procession. He's a king. He's dressed in priestly robes and he's leading this procession in. And he's so excited about who God is, what God means to him, what God's doing, that he starts to dance. And his wife is looking down at this procession from a distance and sees what her husband is doing. And the Bible says she despises him. At the end of the parade, David gives out bread and cakes to people as a sign of God's favor and blessing. And then he takes those things back to his own house to give them out to his family. And as soon as he walks through the door, Micah, his wife, is onto him. And she's sort of saying, you've made a fool of yourself. All the servant girls watching you making a fool of yourself. Everyone's embarrassed of you. You've got no dignity, and really, really has a go at him. And David is very down the line with her in his response. And he basically says, look, I'm not interested in anybody else. I was dancing before the Lord. He wasn't bothered that anybody else was there. What he felt towards God had to be expressed, and it was expressed just for God. That other people saw it wasn't the issue for David. He was just doing it for God. He then points out to his wife that actually God chose him as king over her family. Now, obviously, that's not going to win you too many awards as husband of the year necessarily, but what he's doing is absolutely right. He's pointing out to her, you don't decide what's dignified. You don't decide who's king. God chooses, and God's chosen me knowing what I'm like. And he also then talks about the servant girls that his wife is so embarrassed that he's been dancing in front of. And David says, they will not be judging me the way you're judging me. They will understand better than you do, it seems, that all I was interested in was showing God how I feel about him and what he's doing at this time. It's all about that audience of one. David didn't care that other people could see him. He didn't care about the judgment of other people. He didn't care about his own dignity and his own reputation. The most important thing to him was to express to God how he felt about God. I wonder what holds us back from expressing our feelings towards God. I guess there's a couple of possible answers. The first one is that we don't have any strong feelings. Our relationship with God isn't really anywhere that's prompting us to react like that. You need to really sort that out. The second one is that perhaps we are concerned about the judgment of other people in our families, the other people in our social groups. Even the people in our church groups can make us feel very self-conscious, and we want to do something to express how we feel on the inside, but it's held back. And that might be like David, dancing or singing or worshiping, but it could be something else. It could be something that's not to do with that kind of musical worship side of things that we'll look at in another week. What we need to remember in our worship is that it's all about God. We're doing it for God, not for the praise or condemnation of the people around us. Have you expressed this week some worship to God? Have you taken some time out to say to him how amazing you think he is, how grateful you are for all that he's done for you? Have you sang a song? Have you danced the dance? Have you invested some time in showing God that you appreciate him and all that he's done for you? And if you're doing that, are you making sure that it's just for God's benefit and not so that people think how great you are or something like that? There'll be opportunities for you to worship this week, and as we go through the next few weeks, I hope you discover that actually there's loads of ways to worship and loads of ways to express to God just how you feel about him. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great week.